Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by acknowledging something that we all struggle with: uncertainty. The silence, the waiting, the wondering why someone you care about, someone you know likes you, doesn't take the steps you expect, doesn't reach out the way you hope they will. It's one of the most painful and confusing experiences we face in relationships. But I want to invite you to consider something deeper, something transformative in this moment of waiting. Vulnerability is one of the most powerful human experiences, but it's also one of the most challenging. To allow ourselves to be truly vulnerable means to show up as we are raw, unfiltered, and completely open to the possibility of being hurt. In the context of relationships, it means taking a step forward without knowing how the other person will respond, without the comfort of certainty. And yet, it is in these moments of vulnerability that we experience the depth of connection, intimacy, and growth. Though vulnerability feels like a risk we're not willing to take, we're taught to guard our hearts, to keep ourselves safe from the potential sting of rejection, disappointment, or betrayal. But here's the thing: vulnerability is not about being weak or reckless. It's about having the courage to show up, fully aware of the risks, and still choosing to take the leap. It's about letting go of the need for control and embracing the reality that connection cannot be forced, nor can it be perfected. In relationships, this means stepping into the unknown, not knowing whether the other person feels the same, or if they will reach out when we hope they will. The fear that comes with vulnerability is often rooted in past experiences. Perhaps we've been hurt before, or maybe we've been let down by people we trusted. These experiences can create walls around our hearts, making it difficult to reach out or to trust others with our emotions. But if we're ever going to experience true connection, we must allow ourselves to break down these walls and step into the discomfort of vulnerability. It's easy to believe that staying closed off will protect us, but the truth is, it only isolates us further. Without vulnerability, we can never experience the true beauty of a relationship, the shared understanding, the comfort in knowing we are seen for who we truly are, flaws and all. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give others permission to do the same. It's like opening a door to a deeper level of connection, where both people are allowed to show up as they truly are. In relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or familial, this shared vulnerability creates a bond that is unshakable. It allows us to communicate our needs, express our fears, and share our deepest desires without shame or judgment. And while the fear of rejection or misinterpretation can be daunting, the payoff is worth it. The only way to truly know someone and for them to know you is to be vulnerable. When we hide behind walls, we limit the depth of the connection we can have with another person. Even with all this, vulnerability remains an act of courage. It requires us to trust ourselves to believe that we are enough, just as we are. It also requires us to trust the other person, to believe that they will handle our vulnerability with care, even if they don't always respond the way we expect. Vulnerability is not about perfection or controlling outcomes. It's about showing up fully present with an open heart and mind. It's about taking that first step forward, even when we're not sure what's on the other side. So even when the person we care about doesn't reach out, even when the silence feels unbearable, remember that your vulnerability is not wasted. You have shown courage by being true to yourself. And that alone is a step toward building a deeper, more authentic connection. Fear of judgment is a deeply ingrained part of the human experience. It's a universal feeling, one that we all grapple with in different ways, especially in relationships. We fear that the way we express ourselves, the things we say, or even the way we love, will be judged or misunderstood by those we care about. This fear can manifest in many forms, from worrying about how our appearance is perceived to wondering if our words will be taken the wrong way. But when it comes to relationships, the fear of judgment often runs deeper, affecting how we show up emotionally, how open we are, and how much we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. The fear of judgment stems from a deep-seated desire to belong and to be accepted for who we truly are. We want to be seen and loved without conditions, to have our flaws acknowledged without judgment, and our dreams supported without criticism. The fear of judgment, however, makes it harder to take that first step toward intimacy. We may find ourselves second-guessing our actions, overthinking our words, or even holding back from making the first move because we're afraid of how the other person will perceive us. In the case of a relationship where you care deeply for someone, but they haven't reached out as much as you would like, this fear can be paralyzing. You may wonder, what if I'm too much for them? What if they don't see me the way I see them? What if they judge me for showing how much I care? This fear can lead to self-doubt, which only amplifies the cycle of uncertainty. We start to question our own worth and whether we are worthy of the attention, affection, or love we desire. This self-criticism is a form of judgment we place on ourselves, based on our assumptions of how others might think or feel. But the truth is, the judgments we fear are often just projections of our own insecurities. When we fear that someone will judge us, we are often worried about not measuring up to some arbitrary standard we've set in our minds. In reality, the person we care about may be experiencing their own fears and doubts, which can make it even harder to take action in a relationship. One of the most challenging aspects of fear of judgment is that it creates a cycle of emotional withdrawal. We don't reach out because we're afraid of being rejected or misunderstood, and as a result, we isolate ourselves even more. This creates a barrier not only between ourselves and others, but also between our true selves and the person we long to connect with. When we are constantly in fear of judgment, we are unable to show up as our authentic selves, and this lack of authenticity can erode the foundation of any relationship. Breaking free from the fear of judgment requires us to practice self-compassion and self-acceptance. It means recognizing that we are enough just as we are, and that our worth is not determined by the opinions of others. It's about letting go of the need for validation and instead embracing our own value, trusting that those who truly care about us will see and appreciate us for who we are, imperfections and all. It's important to remember that the person who truly cares for you will not judge you for your vulnerability. They will appreciate it. Judgment is often rooted in insecurity or misunderstanding, but connection is built on understanding and empathy. The fear of judgment may never fully go away, but with time we can learn to move through it. When we challenge the stories we tell ourselves about what others think of us, we open ourselves up to deeper connections. We give ourselves permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to be human in our interactions. In doing so, we create space for the people who matter most to see the real us, the messy, beautiful, vulnerable versions of ourselves, and in turn, build a stronger, more authentic bond with them. The pressure of expectations is something we all experience in varying degrees, especially when it comes to relationships. From a young age, we're often taught to follow certain scripts, what love should look like, when it should happen, and how it should unfold. These expectations, whether they come from family, society, or even ourselves, create a framework that can make us feel like we have to live up to some ideal in order to be worthy of love or connection. When these expectations aren't met, we often feel a sense of failure, frustration, or confusion, and we may even begin to doubt our worth or the authenticity of our feelings. The pressure to meet certain milestones can be overwhelming. We often find ourselves asking questions like, why hasn't he reached out more? Or why hasn't this progressed the way I thought it would? These questions come from the unspoken scripts of how a relationship should evolve, scripts that are often based on assumptions and external influences. There's a societal narrative that says relationships need to develop in a certain way, with clear signs of progress, milestones like texting regularly, dates and labels like boyfriend or girlfriend. But the reality is that every relationship is unique, and the way it develops is often unpredictable. The pressure to fit relationships into a predetermined mold can make us lose sight of the natural pace and depth of connection. The weight of these expectations can also cause us to overlook the present moment, focusing too much on what's supposed to happen next rather than appreciating the relationship as it is. We become so fixated on the idea of what the relationship should look like that we miss the beautiful complexities and nuances that are unfolding in real time. We get caught up in worrying about the future rather than allowing the relationship to evolve naturally in a way that is right for both people involved. The person we care about may not be following the same timeline we've envisioned, but that doesn't mean they don't care. It just means they are on their own journey, navigating their own pace. Expectations also create an environment of anxiety and pressure. When we expect someone to act a certain way or when we place unrealistic demands on them, it can make them feel trapped or overwhelmed. This pressure can make it harder for the other person to communicate openly or to express their feelings authentically. In a relationship, both people need space to be themselves without the fear of disappointing each other or not meeting certain standards. When the weight of these expectations becomes too heavy, it often causes people to pull back instead of lean in to protect themselves from feeling inadequate or incapable of living up to what's expected. The truth is, love and connection don't follow a set of rules or timelines. They are messy, unpredictable, and often happen in ways we can't control. The pressure of meeting expectations can prevent us from being present and fully appreciating the connection that is right in front of us. It can also prevent us from embracing the uniqueness of our relationship with another person, forcing us to measure it against someone else's idea of what it should be. When we allow ourselves to let go of these rigid expectations, we give ourselves the freedom to experience a relationship as it truly is, with all its imperfections, surprises, and moments of genuine connection. Letting go of the pressure of expectations means creating space for the other person to show up as themselves, without fear of judgment or disappointment. It's about surrendering to the uncertainty of the journey and trusting that, no matter where it leads, we will be okay. Relationships can't be rushed or forced. They grow in their own time, and sometimes the most beautiful connections happen when we stop trying to control the outcome and simply let things unfold naturally. Instead of focusing on what's missing, we begin to focus on what's present, the quiet moments of understanding, the laughter, the shared experiences, and the small gestures that speak volumes. When we release the pressure of expectations, we open ourselves up to the possibility of something more meaningful and lasting. Self-doubt and imposter syndrome are two of the most insidious emotions that can hold us back in relationships, and they often work in tandem. Both are rooted in a deep-seated fear that we are not enough, that somehow we are unworthy of love, success, or meaningful connection. When these feelings take hold, they can cause us to second-guess ourselves at every turn, whether in our career or friendships, or especially in our romantic relationships. We become consumed by the belief that we are pretending to be something we are not, that we don't deserve the affection or admiration we are receiving, or that we are somehow tricking others into liking us. This creates a toxic cycle of insecurity that can erode our confidence and prevent us from fully engaging in the connections that we long for. Imposter syndrome, specifically, is the feeling that we are not deserving of the success or happiness we experience, despite evidence to the contrary. We may look at our lives and see a loving partner, friends who care about us, and achievements we've worked hard for, yet still feel like we don't belong in these spaces. In romantic relationships, this can manifest as a constant fear of being found out. We wonder if the person we're with truly sees us for who we are, or if they will eventually realize that we don't measure up. This feeling of not being good enough can cause us to hold back, hide our true selves, or avoid expressing our emotions fully. We may even convince ourselves that we don't deserve to be loved in the way we are being loved, creating distance between ourselves and the person who cares for us. Self-doubt and imposter syndrome are often fueled by a comparison to others. We look at other people's relationships and wonder why ours doesn't look the same, why we're not receiving the same level of attention, or why we're not moving through the stages of a relationship at the same pace. This constant comparison can make us feel like we are failing, like we are somehow behind in the race of love, and it fuels a sense of inadequacy. We may question if the other person will grow tired of us or look elsewhere for someone who is more confident, more attractive, or simply more worthy of their time and affection. These thoughts are dangerous as they feed into the narrative that we are somehow less than, that we don't deserve to be in a loving relationship because we're not perfect. The more we buy into this narrative of self-doubt, the more we inadvertently push others away. When we don't believe that we are worthy of love, we create walls around ourselves, refusing to fully let someone in. We may withdraw, pull back emotionally, or avoid vulnerability out of fear that showing too much of ourselves will reveal our perceived flaws and inadequacies. The irony is that in holding back, we miss out on the very connection we long for, and we perpetuate the belief that we are not worthy of being loved or seen for who we truly are. Overcoming self-doubt and imposter syndrome begins with self-compassion. It requires us to challenge the negative thoughts and narratives we've created about ourselves and instead practice kindness toward our own hearts. It's about recognizing that perfection is not a requirement for love and that flaws are not something to be ashamed of, but rather an integral part of what makes us human. When we begin to embrace our imperfections and acknowledge that we are worthy of love just as we are, we allow ourselves to show up more authentically in relationships. We must also learn to silence the inner critic that constantly tells us we're not enough. This means acknowledging our worth not based on external validation, but by simply being who we are. The person who loves us will appreciate us for the fullness of our being. Not because we are flawless or have it all together, but because we are real. Trusting this truth can help us let go of the fear that we are pretending to be someone we're not and instead allow ourselves to simply be. Over time, as we work through self-doubt and imposter syndrome, we can begin to truly believe that we are enough, deserving of love, and worthy of all the beautiful connections that life has to offer. Timing plays a crucial role in every relationship, yet it's one of the most unpredictable and often misunderstood aspects of connection. We often find ourselves wondering why things don't progress as quickly as we might like, or why someone we care about isn't responding in the way we hoped. The truth is that timing, in its most authentic sense, doesn't always follow our personal schedules or expectations. It is influenced by many factors beyond our control: past experiences, emotional readiness, personal circumstances, and even the timing in the other person's life. Recognizing the importance of timing helps us navigate relationships with more patience and understanding, letting go of the frustrations that come from trying to force things to happen when they're not meant to. Timing can be particularly complicated. We often enter a relationship with a set of expectations about when certain things should happen, when to exchange I love yous, when to introduce someone to friends or family, or when to move to the next level of commitment. But relationships don't operate on a rigid timeline. Sometimes the emotional readiness of one person is simply out of sync with the other. One person might feel deeply in love and eager to move forward, while the other is still processing past relationships or trying to figure out what they want from life. These differences in timing don't necessarily mean that the relationship is doomed. They simply reflect that both individuals are navigating their own emotional landscapes at their own pace. One of the most challenging aspects of timing in relationships is the emotional pace. We all have different speeds at which we process emotions, experiences, and feelings. One person may be ready to dive headfirst into a relationship, while the other may need more time to open up and trust. This emotional difference can cause one person to feel frustrated or neglected, especially when they are eager for the relationship to progress. The reality is that emotional readiness cannot be rushed. Just as we can't speed up someone's healing from past wounds or force them to be ready for a deeper connection, we can't expect someone to match our emotional timeline simply because we feel ready. Timing in relationships isn't just about emotional readiness, it's also about external factors. Sometimes a person may be in a transitional phase of life, such as moving to a new city, dealing with family issues, or focusing on their career. These external pressures can make it difficult for them to fully invest in a relationship, even if they have strong feelings for you. Their mind may be occupied with other concerns, or they may feel the need to prioritize their personal growth before diving into something serious with someone else. In these cases, timing doesn't mean that they aren't interested or that they don't like you. It simply means that they have other aspects of their life that need attention before they can fully engage in a relationship. It's important to recognize that while timing is critical, it is not something that can be controlled. We may wish for a relationship to unfold in a certain way, but sometimes it requires patience, understanding, and the willingness to let things happen naturally. Sometimes one person may need space or time to work through their own emotions before they can be fully present in a relationship. If we truly care about the person, we must accept that their timing might be different from ours and be willing to navigate that difference with grace. Rushing a relationship or pushing for it to move faster than it naturally would can lead to disappointment or resentment, leaving both people feeling overwhelmed or disconnected. The right timing can bring two people together in a way that is far more meaningful and lasting than if they were rushed into the relationship. Trusting in the natural rhythm of connection and allowing the relationship to develop at its own pace can create a deeper bond, one that is grounded in mutual respect and understanding. While waiting for the right timing can feel frustrating, it's important to remember that relationships often grow stronger when they are allowed to unfold in their own time, without being forced or rushed. Understanding the role of timing helps us build a foundation that is more resilient and authentic, paving the way for a healthier and more fulfilling connection. Emotional walls are defense mechanisms we build around ourselves to protect our hearts from pain, rejection, or disappointment. They are often formed as a result of past experiences, such as hurtful relationships, betrayal, or abandonment. When we experience emotional pain, it can feel safer to shut ourselves off from others rather than risk feeling that hurt again. These walls, though built with good intentions, can prevent us from fully experiencing connection, intimacy, and love. While they serve as a means of self-preservation, they also create barriers that make it harder for others to truly know us or for us to know them. Of emotional walls lies fear of being vulnerable, fear of exposing our true selves, and fear of being judged or rejected. Vulnerability requires immense courage because it means opening ourselves up to the possibility of emotional harm. And when we've been hurt before, it becomes all too tempting to avoid that risk altogether. We start to distance ourselves from others, not out of lack of interest or love, but because we're afraid of what might happen if we let them in too deeply. Over time, these walls can grow higher and thicker until we find ourselves isolated, longing for connection, but unable to take the necessary steps to build it. The challenge with emotional walls is that while they protect us in the short term, they also prevent us from forming the kind of deep, meaningful relationships we crave. When we keep others at arm's length, we deprive ourselves of the opportunity to experience the true depth of connection that vulnerability brings. Emotional intimacy can only be created when both people are willing to lower their defenses, to be open and honest about their feelings, and to trust that the other person will not take advantage of their vulnerability. Without emotional walls, we are able to share our fears, desires, and dreams, and in turn allow the other person to do the same. Understanding emotional walls isn't just about recognizing them in ourselves. It's also about recognizing them in others. Sometimes, when someone we care about isn't reaching out or isn't as emotionally available as we would like, it may be a sign that they have their own walls up. It can be easy to take their emotional distance personally, to believe that we're not enough or that they don't care. But the truth is, their emotional walls may be built from their own past experiences, their own fears, and their own struggle with vulnerability. Just as we need time and patience to work through our walls, so too do they. These walls are often not a reflection of our worth, but a reflection of their own emotional struggles. The process of breaking down emotional walls requires patience, empathy, and understanding. We cannot force someone to open up or let their guard down. It takes time and it takes trust. If we care about someone, we must be willing to offer them the space to let their walls come down at their own pace. It also requires us to examine our own walls and be willing to do the work necessary to dismantle them. This means recognizing the past hurts that have shaped us and learning to let go of the fear that holds us back from forming deep, meaningful connections. The road to emotional intimacy is not easy, and it requires vulnerability from both people. But as we begin to lower our walls, we invite others to do the same, creating a space for authentic connection. It's important to remember that no one is immune to fear or pain, and we all have emotional walls in one form or another. What matters is our willingness to work through them and to create relationships that are built on mutual trust, understanding, and a willingness to be open. When we can let down our defenses, we give ourselves the chance to experience the richness of true emotional connection, which is ultimately the most fulfilling and healing experience we can have in any relationship. Self-worth is the foundation upon which everything else in life is built. It dictates how we perceive ourselves, how we allow others to treat us, and how much we believe we deserve love, happiness, and success. When we have a strong sense of self-worth, we approach relationships, career opportunities, and personal challenges with confidence, knowing that we are worthy of all the good things that life has to offer. On the other hand, when our sense of self-worth is weak or compromised, we often find ourselves settling for less than we deserve, doubting our abilities, or even avoiding situations that could lead to growth or fulfillment. Of self-worth is the belief that we are enough just as we are. It's the understanding that our value is inherent, not based on external validation or approval from others. This belief doesn't mean that we are perfect or that we don't have room for growth. It simply means recognizing that we are worthy of love, respect, and kindness because of who we are, not because of what we do or how we look. When we lack this belief in ourselves, we may find ourselves constantly seeking validation from others or measuring our worth against external standards like appearance, accomplishments, or relationships. This leads to a constant cycle of seeking external approval, which, if not met, can lead to feelings of inadequacy and unfulfillment. Self-worth plays a particularly important role. When we value ourselves, we are less likely to tolerate behavior that is hurtful or disrespectful. We set healthy boundaries, communicate our needs, and choose partners who treat us with the love and respect we deserve. However, when our sense of self-worth is low, we may stay in toxic relationships, allowing ourselves to be mistreated or neglected because we don't believe we deserve anything better. We might compromise on our values or ignore red flags because we fear being alone or feel unworthy of the love we truly desire. Self-worth also influences how we approach personal growth and challenges. When we value ourselves, we are more likely to take risks, pursue our passions, and embrace new opportunities, knowing that we have the capacity to handle setbacks and failures. We understand that mistakes don't define us and that our worth is not contingent upon achieving perfection. In contrast, when we lack self-worth, we may shy away from challenges, fearing failure or judgment. We may second-guess ourselves or avoid pursuing our dreams, believing that we are not capable or deserving of success. The importance of self-worth is especially evident in how we deal with rejection or criticism. When we feel secure in our value, rejection doesn't crush us. It becomes a learning experience, something we can grow from. We don't take it personally or allow it to diminish our sense of self. But when our self-worth is fragile, rejection can feel like a devastating blow, reinforcing the belief that we are not good enough or that we don't deserve success or love. This is why it's so crucial to cultivate self-worth before relying on external sources to define our value. Only then can we handle life's challenges with grace and resilience. Building and maintaining self-worth is a lifelong journey. It requires self-compassion, self-acceptance, and the willingness to challenge the negative beliefs and self-criticism that often arise from past experiences. It means forgiving ourselves for past mistakes, acknowledging our strengths, and embracing the idea that we are worthy of happiness, love, and fulfillment simply by existing. It's also important to remember that self-worth is not something that can be taken away by someone else's actions or opinions. While others may influence how we feel about ourselves, ultimately we are the ones who define our value. When we embrace our self-worth, we stop seeking external validation and begin to trust ourselves. We become empowered to make choices that align with our true desires and needs, rather than those shaped by fear or insecurity. As we build our self-worth, we begin to create a life that reflects our true value, one where we are no longer afraid to stand up for ourselves, pursue our dreams, and accept the love and respect we deserve. Self-worth is not just a nice to have, it's a necessity for living a fulfilling, authentic, and empowered life.